And in order to win, you need help on the injury front. And with that, we bring in our guest at this time. It is our friend Virginia Zakis from Inside Injuries. Virginia, how are you?
Doing well, staying very busy with all these injuries.
Are you staying dry is most important.
Yeah, I think we actually are going to avoid most of the bad weather here. So
Awesome. That's fantastic to hear. Let me start in Green Bay. It's one of the bigger stories of the week. The injury to Aaron Rodgers that caused him to be carted off. I immediately thought it was a broken leg for him. Other people speculated a torn ACL. Of course, he came back to play in the second half of Sunday Night Football. And if you read like Pro Football Doctor on Twitter, everyone kind of believes it's a sprained MCL for Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy says it is no cakewalk that he's going to play on Sunday. Are you hearing that it's a sprained MCL as well? And if so, what's the timetable? Should we expect Aaron Rodgers to be out there on Sunday?
yeah, so we're showing it's most likely an MCL sprain, possibly a meniscus injury, but based on the mechanism of how his knee moved, it does look like an MCL injury. If it's a mild sprain, it is realistic for him to play this weekend, but his mobility is going to be affected. I'm sure you also noticed that he wasn't able to really step into those long throws. Of course, he had that incredible comeback and was great playing through the injury. I'm going to guess he fights through it and tries to play again this weekend, but I think this is something that's going to linger for the next few weeks, and I think we'll see him miss some practices or just get in a few limited practices each week.
Well, that's pretty good to hear. I don't know if you saw Virginia, but his post-game interview, he seemed a little loopy. They gave him some serious happy pills at halftime to really relieve the pain. For anyone listening or watching out there who didn't see it, make sure to check that out because it was pretty funny. But I want to ask you about another Green Bay Packer. His number one wide receiver in Devonta Adams yesterday popped up on the injury report really as a surprise. We weren't expecting this. So overall, the Packers are banged up here going into a Week 2 matchup against their division rival Minnesota Vikings. And whether or not Devonta Adams was healthy or not, he was still going to have a tough matchup because we assume that he's going to face Xavier Rhodes in that game. So how worried should we be with this shoulder injury to Devonta Adams as he was a limited participant practice today, and what will his availability be like for Sunday?
So it's still looking like he's probably going to be able to play in this one. We're showing only a 1 week optimal recovery time, but he is an elevated injury risk with a below average health performance factor. So he's going to be at a higher risk than normal of getting hurt this weekend and likely won't play quite as well. Very possible for wide receivers to play through mild shoulder sprains, but it will hurt. It'll affect his blocking. It'll affect his ability to go up and reach for a ball. So probably need to, limit our expectations a little bit for him this weekend, but I do think we'll see him out there.
Well, they're already limited with Aaron Rodgers being limited. So the expectations are quite low out there in Green Bay in general. But we also mentioned to start off our show, Virginia, there's been a ton of injuries that have just kind of popped up on us out of nowhere, and Corey Davis was the latest one who battled a hamstring injury for much of 2017. Now he's got a hamstring injury again in 2018. Is it the same hamstring, and how serious is this?
So I do believe it's the same hamstring, although that's not confirmed. It also sounds like the Titans have said they're just trying to manage his ongoing hamstring issues. I'm not sure I totally believe that because, throughout the preseason, they didn't say anything about his hamstring. So it's likely pretty sore. I do think he's going to play this weekend, but again, he's going to be at, a higher injury risk than most wide receivers out there. We're showing an elevated injury risk right now with that hamstring strain. So we know how easily these are aggravated. This could be something, honestly, that we're looking at for the rest of the year. Don't be surprised if he's limited, every Wednesday, a lot of Thursdays throughout the year. But I think he's going to play. Right now, there's not a huge cause for concern, but definitely something to watch throughout the rest of the week.
Greg, if you own Corey Davis right now, do you try to trade him for 75 cents on the dollar?
Yes. I don't own Corey Davis anywhere either. Remember,
I have him as a wide receiver 3 in one league, and I know a lot of people have him in that range or as a flex wide receiver.
We were in that.
It's terrible.
We were in the league. I was telling you my last draft 2 days before, and I took Robert Woods over Corey Davis. You're like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, I'm not the Corey Davis guy. I am the Robert Woods guy. And you thought that was a mistake. Problem is, Marcus Mariota, Virginia, is also battling an injury, and he returned to practice yesterday, which is obviously good news. But up until then, I hadn't heard anything on the injury. We know Davis is limited. What's the deal with Marcus Mariota?
So the good news here is this actually sounds more like a nerve issue in his elbow than any sort of like a ligament strain or a sprain to the elbow. And that if it's, a lot of the time it can resolve itself pretty quickly. He was a full participant yesterday, and they've said unless he has a setback, of course, he's going to play Sunday. So not too much concern here. He is an elevated injury risk. Health performance factor is below average. And we're also showing a 2-week optimal recovery time. So if he can make it through the next 2 weeks without a setback, he should be good to go. No concerns going forward. But I would keep a close eye on his practice participation in the rest of the week and make sure he doesn't drop to a limited practice one day or anything like that.
Virginia, another injury that randomly popped up on us yesterday was Rex Burkhead with a concussion. We know that he was already dealing with that slight tear in his knee before the season, and he actually looked pretty good in week 1. He didn't get in the end zone or anything, but now dealing with a concussion. This is huge news because Sony Michel is still kind of battling his way back from injury. If both of those guys don't suit up, somebody needs to get the running back snaps in New England, and it would probably be James White. And in a matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars where, they have those strong perimeter cornerbacks, James White could see a huge workload in this matchup. So we need to know what's going on with Rex Burkhead and what are his chances of playing this week now the fact that he's dealing with a concussion.
Yeah, so this one definitely did come out of nowhere. He did take a really big hit late in the first half, but that's likely when he got concussed, kept playing, which is obviously a big concern. Good news is he was out there yesterday. He just did individual drills, no contact, but that is a sign that he's progressing through concussion protocol. So we're going to have to watch him pretty closely. If he doesn't get cleared by Friday, I definitely would not plan to have him in your lineups this weekend. To definitely have a backup plan in place. But he was a high risk already. Now he's a very high injury risk. Because there's still going to be concerns about that knee for at least the next few weeks. So I would plan to stay away from Rex Burkhead for a while, and I'd say he's got a 50-50 shot of clearing concussion protocol.
Greg, I think regardless of what happens with Burkhead or Sony Michel, James White is a top 24 running back in PPR this week.
I completely agree. He's the one running back in that offense that Tom Brady's going to trust.
Scored a touchdown in week 1.
Yeah, there's no way they're going to trust Sony Michel in pass protection early on. He's had that issue in college with him, certainly the fumbles. James White is the running back you want to own right now in New England, without question. Totally agree with that, Frankie. As we continue on with Virginia Zakis from Inside Injuries, we mentioned Leonard Fournette earlier on in the show. And Leonard Fournette, we knew about the well-documented foot and leg injuries, Virginia. Unfortunately, they didn't get any better, and he left week 1 early. Everyone's kind of saying it's mild, but he hasn't practiced yet this week, and I don't know that he'll be out there today for practice. What are you seeing that the latest is on Leonard Fournette?
Yeah, so this is not a good situation, and even if he starts to feel better, they should not play him this weekend. Mild hamstring strains still come with an optimal recovery time of 2 weeks, so he shouldn't play this weekend. He's one of those players we warned before the season. Don't waste a first-round draft pick on him. He's always dealing with something, whether it's his foot or his ankle. Now this hamstring injury. He's a high injury risk. He was elevated already. He's probably going to be elevated the rest of the year, even if he recovers from this pretty quickly. So, if he is active, he's one of those guys you can't really say not to start him. But I just don't think you can trust him this week if he does play, and he really shouldn't play.
And Virginia, something that we talk a lot about with you and Dr. A is compensation, right? So if he's dealing with this hamstring injury and he's starting to compensate more on the other leg, that can lead to more foot, ankle injuries, which is something that we've dealt with before with Leonard Fournette.
Absolutely. The foot may have caused the hamstring. It's
and vice versa. I mean, if he
100%.
continues to run with his hamstring and starts leaning on the other leg or, trying to compensate for it, that can lead to more problems with his foot and ankles. That sounds correct, right, Virginia?
Yeah, definitely. And, when we say these players are elevated or high risk, that doesn't just apply to the current body part that's injured. Of course, that body part is at a higher risk of getting either re-injured or, made much worse. But, like you were saying, these players overcompensate. And the foot injury or the ankle injury definitely could have led to this. And even if those feel fine now, playing through a hamstring strain could put more stress on any other part of his lower body and lead to another injury.
Greg, someone asked me yesterday if they're a Fournette owner, should they trade Peyton Barber to get TJ Yeldon on their team? And I said yes.
Really?
Is that crazy?
I don't like that because I think Corey Grant's going to have a role in this offense.
Yeah, but I still think if Leonard Fournette's out, we're going to still get that 15 to 20 touches for TJ Yeldon.
You might be right.
They leaned on him again in week 1.
Yeah, but I have a feeling Corey Grant just wasn't part of the game plan.
And even if
I think
once they get inside, the red zone, Corey Grant's more of like the smaller speedster type guy. TJ Yeldon's going to be the one scoring touchdowns if Leonard Fournette's out.
I'm a huge TJ Yeldon supporter. I always have been.
Why?
I liked him in college.
So random.
No, because I liked him in college at Alabama, and I just thought he was going to be awesome. I thought he was going to be one of these running backs that were just awesome. I said the same thing about Jamal Charles at Texas. I was like, this TJ Yeldon dude is amazing. And he was a second-round pick, and I just thought he was going to be great. It hasn't really worked out yet, but I do like TJ Yeldon.
Virginia, another running back I need to ask you about, someone that I kind of want to strangle Greg Sussman for making us draft in the GST draft, is Devonta Freeman. We took him in the second round of that draft. He has multiple things working against him this week. He's going up against a Carolina Panthers front seven, which is very stout. They're tough against the run. And not only that, he has this knee injury now that he's dealing with. We saw he really sat out the second half of that first game against the Eagles. What worries me most about this is that they played on Thursday last week, and he's still not practicing now. He's going to have that, 10-day time period to get ready for this game, and it still sounds like his chances to play are in doubt. So what's going on with Devonta Freeman? Does he play this week? And how serious is this knee injury with him?
Yeah, so as a Falcons fan, this one really hurts. Unfortunately, Freeman is also one of those guys we warned about early in the year. He started an elevated injury risk because he suffered that PCL and MCL sprain last year. Didn't undergo surgery, but missed most of the offseason. Likely not dealing with a tear, but when you deal with a significant injury like he did last year, the ligaments do get stretched out and leave you more susceptible to an injury like this. It didn't seem like there was one play where, he suffered a really bad knee injury, but it doesn't take much, unfortunately, when your ligaments are stretched out like that. Obviously didn't practice yesterday. I don't think things are looking good for him this weekend. We're showing he needs at least 2 weeks to recover. But again, because this has been a long, lingering injury, it's not like in 2 weeks he's going to be 100%, even if he takes the next 2 weeks off. So he's at a very high injury risk. He shouldn't play this weekend. Again, I think we'll see a lot of Tevin Coleman. But this is going to be, if you're a Devonta Freeman owner, this is definitely not a good sign for this week and really for the rest of the season.
Virginia, you're going to get me killed.
You hear that, Greg? You hear that, Greg? I hope Michael Florio's listening and watching too. Because when good old Frank over here was saying, hey, let's not take Devonta Freeman in the second round, let's double down on wide receiver. We have Antonio Brown. Let's get Keenan Allen. And then we'll figure out the running back position. Nah, position scarcity. We got to get a running back. We got to take Devonta Freeman. This is another guy that I feel like this could just end up being a wash season for him. And maybe it's an overreaction, but you just heard it from Virginia. The ligaments in his knee, it feels like at any point, something even more serious than this can happen throughout the course of the season. And if that does happen, Tevin Coleman is instantly a top 20 running back, Greg.
Virginia, what Frank didn't tell you was how in another draft, he's like, we got to draft Doug Baldwin. I'm like, nah, I like Juju. We really want Doug Baldwin. He's back. He's back toward the top of my leaderboard. He's at the second 2-3 turn. I really want Doug Baldwin there. Now, he didn't mention that because Doug Baldwin not only was battling an injury coming into week one, but he couldn't even survive week one. How bad is the current leg injury to Doug Baldwin?
Yeah, so this new one is a right MCL sprain. MRI showed a grade 2 injury, which means that there is a partial tear to the ligament. The good news is the MCL typically heals on its own unless it's a full thickness tear, which this one is not. But we are showing he needs a minimum of 4 weeks to fully recover. I guess the only good news here is it's going to give his left knee a little bit more time to heal. But again, I think that's also going to be an issue that lingers through the rest of the year. They haven't said it, but we believe it's a meniscus tear, which will most likely eventually require surgery if that's the case. So obviously he's a very high injury risk right now. Definitely don't think he's going to play in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but we're showing, again, at least 4 weeks he needs to miss, but probably closer to 6.
Yeah, I don't know how you can feel any positivity or optimism with Doug Baldwin right now. Again, another one of these players, even more so than anyone else we've talked about today, Greg, where I feel like it might just be a wash season for Doug Baldwin, which is why we were aggressively going out and adding guys like Brandon Marshall and Tyler Lockett, who seem to be the top 2 targets in this passing game. Virginia, we've been getting a lot of questions about Marquise Goodwin this week, a guy who is dealing with a, quote, thigh bruise, a deep thigh bruise. What more can you tell us about that for a speedster like Marquise Goodwin, who obviously needs his legs underneath him to be able to get downfield and get behind defenses?
Sounds like he needs a deep tissue massage, which sounds lovely.
So normally when a player has a quad contusion, we'd call it a soft tissue injury. They should be fine within a week. With this one, we're actually showing a grade 1 injury, which does kind of confirm that it really is a pretty deep contusion. Optimal recovery time is 3 weeks.
Wow.
So probably a lot longer than you might expect for this. His health performance factor is also below average. So again, like you said, for a speedy wide receiver like Goodwin, playing through any sort of a quad injury is really going to affect him on the field. So I think he's probably very questionable for this weekend. But if he is active, I wouldn't put him in fantasy lineups for right now.
Yeah, so Marquise Goodwin may be active maybe a couple of weeks. You're hearing Dante Pettis' name step up, Travis Taylor, and Pierre Garçon, right?
Now, I'm really excited about Dante Pettis here.
Yeah?
I'm really excited about that possibility because if you look at the Pro Football Focus cornerback wide receiver matchups right now, they have Pierre Garçon matched up with Darius Slay. Darius Slay left in week 1 against the Jets, but he is expected to play in week 2. I think he would be on the same side as Pierre Garçon. If that happens, Dante Pettis will be matched up with Nevin Lawson, who got absolutely torched in week 1. So I really, really like that play. If it's confirmed Sunday morning that Marquise Goodwin is out, Dante Pettis is going to be inside my top 36 at wide receiver this week, Greg.
There you go, Dante Pettis.
Very aggressive on him.
Potentially a top 3 wide receiver, top 36 wide receiver, rather, for Frankie. Virginia, final question, and it doesn't really have to do with the player that's hurt, and that's in Detroit. We saw LeGarrette Blount go down with a bad knee injury. There's a lot of very anxious and excited Kerryon Johnson owners. How serious is the injury to LeGarrette Blount? We have under a minute remaining.
So we're actually showing a soft tissue shoulder injury, but he was a full participant at practice yesterday. Also showing a grade 1 knee, even though they didn't report that on the injury report. He's an elevated injury risk right now, so not looking great, but not a long-term concern here. Optimal recovery time around 2 to 3 weeks.
So the question will be, will we see enough of Kerryon Johnson to make him a viable starter this week, Frankie?
I currently have him outside my top 36. I just don't see how you can trust the situation. Even if he goes off this week, I don't think you can kick yourself for it because we don't really know what his usage is going to be, at least not in week 2.
And there you go. Virginia Zakis from Inside Injuries. We appreciate the time as always.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Absolutely. We'll talk to Virginia and Dr. A and the crew from Inside Injuries next week. When we come back, Frank's giving you a taste of those top 36 rankings. We dive into the running backs coming up next. Fantasy Best Friends Forever. Fantasy Sports Radio Network.